Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. We are here today to talk about a very special book, Death at the Movies, Hollywood's Guide to the Hereafter. And we have the honor to have with us at Kardec Radio, Lynn and Tom Davis Giannelli. They are in San Rafael, California, and they're going to be here with us talking about this very special book that they put together, something that was long coming, and we need that type of evaluation. Lynn Davis Giannelli is actually a psychotherapist, a consultant and workshop leader she has been doing this for over 40 years, and she's the co-founder of the Bay Area Institute for Integrative Body Psychotherapy. She has long experience working with the terminally ill and their families, and is now a volunteer with the Living Dying Project, providing spiritual support in the dying process. Lynn also teaches Hatha Yoga and Yoga Nidra, and is a longtime practitioner of meditation. She blogs occasionally on a wide range of subjects from marriage to meditation at Lynn's blog, and on the movies, of course, as we are talking about the very book. Tom Davis Giannelli cut his media teeth as third base cameraman for the Philadelphia Phillies before ascending to New York to become an independent film producer, director, and an instructor in film production at New York's New School for Social Research. Returning to San Francisco for a doctorate in psychology, he met Lynn, married, and settled in a 26-year career as a therapist and a clinical director for Conard House Incorporation, a large progressive mental health agency. He now writes a little, cooks, and grows cacti, and they are here with us. We're going to open the line very soon for them, as they are going to be discussing a quite intriguing book, Death at the Movies, Hollywood's Guide to the Hereafter. You know, many people talk about disseminating these ideas about the hereafter, mediumship, reincarnation, about spiritual life. But certainly Hollywood has been the main disseminator. No matter if it's done on purpose or not, it is being done. And in this book, they talk about many interesting themes and themes of different movies that they discuss that we really want to talk about, things that can be life-changing. At least they will make many people think about, contemplate things that probably they haven't. And if they had, they can even go deeper. So right now we are pre-Christmas, an opportunity, not only Christmas, but a season of lots of reflection and meditation for all people around the world, because the year is also coming to an end and a new year is beginning, and people create lists of resolution in which they really want to change their lives. Well, to kickstart the program here, would like to share with you that Kardec, in his book, The Spirit's Book, published in 1867, he actually told us about the hereafter quite extensively. And in the book, we will see whole chapters dedicated to understanding about the afterlife. And many of the movies that we're going to talk about here, they portray quite precisely things that were discussed at the time. Well, as we are preparing for this season of meditation and reflection, for preparation for a year to come, we have here a message that was brought in by a kind spirit named May May through the renowned Brazilian medium Chico Xavier. It's entitled Christmas Card, and you can find it in a CD entitled Enlightening Messages, and a book entitled as well as Enlightening Messages. You can buy it at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's website, www.spiritistssbaltimore.org. Listen to the message now. After the break, we're going to open the line for Lynn and Tom Janelli.
Christmas card. At the dawn of Christmas, which awakens in you the music of hope, listen to the voice of someone who searches for the nest of your soul. Someone who lights up the star of generosity in your eyes and sweetens your feelings as though he had a harp of tenderness hidden in his chest. Yes, it is Jesus, the faithful friend who has returned. Even if you did not want to, today you would remember your sacred graces. As you recall your mother's songs at your cradle, your father's care when he held you in his compassionate arms, the patience of the teachers who guided you in school, and the pure love of old friendships that appear to you to be far away, you contemplate the street where lights and carols honor his glory. However, you fall over the weight of tears which cleanse your heart. It is so because he speaks to your soul, pleading for forgiveness for those who stumble, help for those who suffer, a coat for those who tremble in the vastness of night, consolation for those who groan discouraged, and light for those who lay in darkness. Do not hesitate. Hear his petition and do something. Smile again at those who have offended you. Bless those who have wounded you. Share your bounty with your brothers in need. Give 1 minute of solace to the sick. Offer a piece of bread to those who pray alone above ruins and abandoned bridges. Extend a soft bed sheet to those who await death without the coziness of a home. Give up a small sum of your wallet towards helping worn-out mothers who suffer seeing their small children squirm with hunger or make happen the happiness of a forgotten child. It does not matter if you say that you cultivate goodwill only today when Christmas shines on you. Let's start to live with Jesus, even if it is for a couple of hours every now and then, and we will learn little by little to be with him always, as much as he is with us, coming daily into our intimacy and sustaining us forever.
We will return to our program after these messages.
New release, Liberation. In this compelling narrative, Andre Luiz emphasizes the work of high-order spirits in the effort to convert the spirit Gregorio to the good, an effort that culminates with the unforgettable re-encounter with his mother, herself a highly evolved spirit, wherein he surrenders to the irresistible call of love. The book also contains information on how unhappy spirits act as they try to involve incarnates in their wiles. The spirit author tells of the intercession of high-order spirits on behalf of human beings, demonstrating the divine compassion that grants to all the blessed opportunity to free themselves by means of study, labor, and persevering service in the practice of the good. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want spirituous books for your children? At Edicei of America, you will find a collection of them. From the best-selling book, Our Father, in which the spirit Mei through Chico Xavier brought countless poems, stories, and folk tales based on the Lord's Prayer, to the beautiful and educational collection by the author Adelson Sales on Back to School and many others. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Nourish your soul
with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand sections of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website, www.kardecradio.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of Spiritism. This year with the in-depth study of the book Genesis by Allan Kardec. Join us every Wednesday evening through the web from any computer or mobile device, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is free, open to all, and requires no registration. For more information, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here pre-Christmas, preparing ourselves to understand a little bit more about the fact that there is the afterlife. Well, we are not the only ones who think about it. Actually, Hollywood has been promoting these ideas in so many ways and forms through its movies. And there is a special couple who are actually psychotherapists in California who actually paid close attention to the contents of such movies throughout many decades. Lynn and Tom Gianelli are here with us directly from California, and they are going to delight our minds with a very beautiful book and intriguing, interesting book they put together. Death at the Movies. Here they are, Lynn and Tom Gianelli. Thank you so much for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
It's our pleasure.
Delighted to be with you.
So it's so interesting. Lynn, you have been working with terminally ill patients, correct?
Yes.
And is that how you gravitated to the interest on the thought about afterlife? Have you always believed in the afterlife? What are your thoughts in that regard?
For me, it's not been so much a question of believing or not believing. For me, it's a more kind of an intuitive feeling than that. There's just this kind of, I think, innate intuition of a beyond, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
That has kind of always been with me, and I've always been interested in how, as human beings, do we come to terms with life and death, and what comes after that. It seems like that's such a fascinating, compelling kind of question.
Mm-hmm. And when you work with patients at that moment in their lives, does it become quite evident for patients that there is a continuation? Would you say it's almost like undoubtable that people think about it and they are more sure about it at that moment in their lives?
I think that for some people that is clearly true. But so many people die in such states of both psychological unconsciousness or spiritual unconsciousness that they sort of die as they lived with much of that unconsciousness unchanged. I mean, I think it varies very much from person to person.
That's quite interesting.
But sometimes what you see, is you see the moment of the process of dying is just like the process of being born, only in reverse.
How so?
And when the spirit leaves the body, that's a very palpable moment.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that it's a process. It's not something that happens in a snap. It's a process as much as labor at birth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
It makes so much sense, exactly. We understand that in the Spiritist view because we understand that there is connections between the spiritual body and the physical body, and it takes time to discarnate, actually. But let me ask Tom. Tom, you also are a psychotherapist, but you also a film producer. So how you got interested in evaluating these aspects of the afterlife in so many of the movies that were produced by Hollywood?
Well, it's very interesting. What attracted me to the subject more than anything else were a group of movies that I really, really love, whose subject is basically based on two primordial themes: the crisis of death and an intuition of the transcendent. And that's what drives these movies. And these happen to be classic movies produced for, I'd say, since the 1930s, a whole body of motion pictures which are about people who are facing the crisis of death and how they navigate that particular space of their life, or that particular space of your death, if you will. And these movies are genuinely accepted by the industry and by film scholars as classic movies, and yet they seem to be embedded with a deep wisdom about death and what happens when you die. How that wisdom got there may not have been consciously arrived at, but nevertheless, these films do carry embedded in them teachings about death and about the transition from this life to another life. And that's the thing that fascinated me about these movies, and always being a complete movie nut, we watch everything. We really got interested in this particular kind of films, and we saw them as potential illustrations, or, if you will, teachings for people who are dealing with anxiety and suffering about death, about their own death, and that what we do in the book is we present illustrations from these films of people, how they deal with that anxiety and how they deal with that fear and how they navigate that strange space that exists once you die, before you go on to your next whatever type of existence it may be. So that's sort of a long answer to your question.
No, that's wonderful. And this book that you and Lynn put together is so fascinating because you analyze these aspects in movies that come from 1939 to the year 2010. So we're talking about many decades of movie production.
Yeah, and interesting to sort of see how the human society's presentation of these issues in movies evolves over that period of time.
And how was it for the two of you? How did the idea of analyzing these movies from that psychological perspective came along?
Well, that's an interesting thing. We were working together as psychologists in San Francisco, and we both were very, as I say, we were both movie nuts. We loved to go to the movies, and we somehow got involved with an organization, an actual publication, an arts review, a monthly arts review in San Francisco that offered us a job of reviewing movies. So we started reviewing movies, and naturally, the way we reviewed these movies, we reviewed them from our perspective of death and people's, all the people we work with who had great fear of and anxiety about death, and and where that took us. So that's why we really got into the subject.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that that during all of this time, Tom and I, worked together as members of a mystical school and receiving teachings from our master Oscar Ichazo, who so beautifully, exquisitely laid out the parameters of the human psyche and its relationship with the cosmos. And so, we had those kind of understandings, those teachings together about the process of dying and what comes after, and doing those practices together. So that was also a really important part of what brought our interest in movies as vehicles of spiritual teachings began to evolve.
That's so interesting, as you say.
And also, when we started putting the book together, there was in the background of us the idea of attempting to put something out there that could alleviate people's fears and anxieties. Basically, for many people, just the word death it causes them to go into a place of terror, and you might say that being in that place, there's nothing that person can do can actually get rid of that death terror. So we started thinking of the book in terms of a self-help guide for the hereafter.
That's why you subtitled it, Guide to the Hereafter. And how so you expect that people are going to read the book to actually enlighten themselves?
Well, yes.
I mean, that's too grand a claim, but certainly, we would like to make some, tiny contribution to, furthering the culture's understanding of life and death and the beyond. And we would like to see if we could, in any way, tiny way, point to a kind of intuitive understanding inside of human hearts that there is a beyond.
There is a beyond. And when you talk about this, can you say overall that amongst all these movies in the long range between 1939 and 2010, the movies that you analyzed, can you tell that the description of the hereafter is very similar? Because they were produced by different writers, different directors. Can you say there is a commonality between the description about the afterlife?
Well, I think what the commonality is that the theme is like, what Joseph Campbell identified as the theme of the hero's journey, and it says that there's a journey of the soul from ignorance to wisdom, from resistance to acceptance, from conflict into peace, and that journey is not limited by the physical death of the body, right? That journey continues into kind of other realms, you might say, even after the death of the physical body.
So you can tell that amongst all these movies, there are common points that could actually help the reader portray more easily what to expect in the afterlife.
Well, there's one point that runs across all the films, and that is, in some way, they are touched with the transcendent. The spirit of the transcendent is in these films, You can palpably feel them when you see them. You feel it emotionally. And that's a very important point.
They carry the spirit of love, and they carry the spirit of wisdom. Kind of intuitively, or Jung would say archetypally. And so your heart is inevitably touched by it, and your spirit is soothed by it. Okay. Because it really points to the primacy of love and truth and justice, and say that the quest for love and truth and justice does not end when the body ends.
It's interesting. We actually describe, I think somebody let us know this fact about the book, that we actually deal with 44 different situations. Now, this is 44 different approaches to the fact of death, of a person who is dying, or who has died, or who is dreaming they died, or having a hallucination that they died. And how they work their way out of that is cumulatively, throughout reading through the book, looking at this question in every different possible angle in very entertaining movies. That's the best part about it. It's a pleasant learning. You are being entertained while at the same time you are being enlightened.
You are receiving the teachings.
You're receiving the teaching. The teaching is embedded in these movies, but it's not a conscious embedding. It's like the spirit visits the film. This particular film is touched by the spirit. One film I might put out there as a perfect example of a film that is touched strongly by the spirit and is appropriate for this time of year is the movie It's a Wonderful Life,
which you can see everywhere on television, even many, many, many years after it first came out, because it has that kind of connection to the eternal, to the transcendent, to some sort of intuitive wisdom.
Yeah, and that's
what makes that
wonderful
film
movie.
Literally timeless.
Mhm. And let me ask you this: when you analyze these movies, you're talking about movies that also have contents in parallel, not only about the afterlife, but how those who stay in the afterlife can also affect here. When you talk about movies or reincarnation, the aspect of reincarnation as well. For example, in the movie Birth,
yes,
or the communication with those.
Movie.
Exactly. So you're talking about the hereafter not only as something that is happening out there, but you are identifying that these movies are bringing contents about how this other dimension is also happening here as we are living this material life. Correct?
Yes. That it's constantly interwoven.
So, but Tom was saying that from the point of view of Hollywood, there is no actual intention of teaching about spirituality when they put together these movies, right? There is no.
I think that's true. I think there, occasionally you find an explicitly, say, Buddhist screenwriter like Bruce Joel Rubin, who wrote Ghost, and I think also Groundhog Day.
What was that?
Bruce Joel Rubin.
Yeah.
What?
He wrote Ghost. I've got it right here. He wrote Ghost and Jacob's Ladder.
All right, two very different movies. But mostly it's the speaking of what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious that comes forth in those movies, rather than any individual or any group's conscious intention, because I think most of the time when people set out to make explicitly spiritual movies, those movies are often flat or dull or preachy and don't in any way succeed with the public. So I think it's when this kind of deep human intuition or this spirit that touches the movies sometimes speaks. That's what I think makes the movie transcendent. Not anybody's specific plan to make it that.
Might mention here that we're looking at the culture currently, and what we're noticing, we're noticing not a diminution of these kind of films, but all of a sudden there seems to be a lot of these kind of films coming out. There's a great concern out in the culture right now about death, for lots of good reasons.
Why?
Well, for one thing, we baby boomers and war babies are getting old. So, the fact that we are going to die before a great deal longer, and we have seen, many of our dearest friends die, our parents die. It's become an inescapable fact that can no longer be denied. And I think the culture has seen so much death, certainly in this century, that again, that sort of wall of denial is breaking down, and people are wanting to talk about death. Showtime Movie Channel just put on an exquisite mini-series filming the lives and the families of terminally ill people, right really up until the moment of death. Beautifully, exquisitely done. Beautifully, beautifully done.
Then there's this whole phenomena going on in the country called death cafes. Are you familiar with them? Have you heard about them?
Yes, but probably I don't know if all the listeners are.
It's taken off like wildfire. There's death cafes in every city. And you know what people do? I mean, they gather together at these cafes and they talk about death.
That's wonderful.
And there's now death dinners where people invite their friends over for the topic of the evening is death, along with, a lovely dinner.
And this is not in a morbid way. This is just to
not
promote
in a morbid
awareness.
way.
Not in a morbid
really
way.
Open, exploratory, truth-telling way, of bringing this out of the shadows into the light of consciousness.
That's quite interesting. Actually, there is a website, deathcafe.com, and people can try, and people can try to find out if there is a death cafe nearby their home. So it's quite interesting because they have
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. We actually have a blog at the Death Cafe site. I think it's called Transit Now. But I'm not quite sure. But we do have a blog by us on at their website.
That is very interesting. That's beautiful because it certainly brings a new opportunity. So as you're saying, more and more people.
Also, I should mention we have our own website, which has lots of information about these types of movies, and that website is www.deathatthemovies.com, and anybody can go to their computer and bring up all this information about these types of movies.
Yes, we actually have one question here. Before we go to our break, we have a question from Marcos. He is Marcos D. Clay. He is in Canada, Toronto, Canada, and he's relaying his question right here from Blog Talk Radio chat room. He's asking you, Tom and Lynn, if you have ever watched one of the Spiritist movies that were produced in Brazil, such as No Solar, Chico Xavier, etc. Have you heard of these movies before?
Yeah, I haven't seen the movies, but I know about. I've seen clips on television about them, and I know about that, and I know about that spiritual movement in Brazil. As a matter of fact, I was down in the Amazon myself, and was introduced to some of the methodologies of their spirituality.
Oh, that's interesting. And he actually has a second question here, as I read, that Chico Xavier has written books with lots of knowledge on and food for thought, that are food for thought to everyone about the life beyond. And how can we get some of these books to get to the hands of some Hollywood writers and producers?
Well, I think Hollywood writers are probably actually looking for those books. I think that, as I say, I mean, just in the last year, we've seen a couple of these what we call movies of the transcendent. There's what were the two most recent ones? Gravity, for instance, and All Is Lost. All Is Lost. Those are just two of the most recent ones dealing with the whole subject of
between life and death,
and the spirit in isolation. The fear of isolation, the fear of being lost in vast empty space. It seems to be coming together, and I think there's going to be a lot more written about it and a lot more of these types of movies coming up. And I think it's in the culture very, very powerfully.
Okay, so Tom and Lynn, we're going to give a short break. When we come back, we'd like to discuss some of the movies and how you analyzed movies that range from 1939 to 2010, okay?
Thanks.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Getting to the Light. Spiritist Therapy for Discarnate Spirits is a small book that offers guidance to Spiritist practitioners and Spiritist counselors. Purchase your copy at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on a previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Help prevent suicide by reading and sharing these books with others. 2 great books are available to help in this Kardec Radio campaign to prevent suicide. Suicide, All You Need to Know, by the international Spiritist speaker Richard Simonetti. You can buy your copy at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com. Also, Memoirs of a Suicide by the medium Yvonne Pereda. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Kardec Radio now offers more programs during the week and weekends. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can follow the beautiful program God at Home with Francisca Kranz and the British Spiritist community. They will brighten your days by doing a God at Home meeting wherever you are in the world, while teaching you how to do the same in your own home with your family and friends. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will hear incredibly inspirational Spiritist talks directly broadcasted by Spiritist Network. They will be true educational moments to carry out to immortality. Every Saturday, live interviews, Bridging Health and Spiritism with the host Dr. Vanessa Anceloni. You may ask questions to the interviewed guests by calling 858-769-4705. And every Sunday, tune in to Spiritist Awareness at Kardec Radio. You will hear a series of segments on a diversity of Spiritist topics. Kardec will broadcast the Spiritus Moment with Kirsten DeMello, the reading of the Spiritus book by John DeRosa and Steve Shepard, Spiritus in Your Life with Drs. Marco and Joyce Magalhães, Spiritus and the Gospel with Luis Sergio Marotta, Spiritus Education for Youth and Children with Bernadette Leal, Spiritus Music with James Marotta, Neuroscience and Spiritism with Dr. Vanessa Anceloni, and many more segments coming soon. Enjoy it all and nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here talking about the very book, Death at the Movies, an actual Hollywood guide for the hereafter. A book that describes and analyzes the hereafter in movies that were produced in 1939 to 2010. In 2010, Clint Eastwood actually produced a beautiful movie entitled actually Hereafter. And if you go to the website deathatthemovies.com, you can get a hold of the authors, Tom and Lynn Janelli, about the book, the themes, the movies, and much more. And Tom and Lynn Janelli, they are psychotherapists basically, and Tom is also a film producer, and they put together this beautiful book that is certainly very inspiring. It talks about things that we know deep in ourselves, but probably we are not paying too much attention. Lynn, as a psychotherapist, you talked about this collective unconscious, right?
Yes.
And the fact that we are naturally gravitating to a broader awareness. So you recognize that humanity is progressing in its consciousness.
Yes.
You do. So you think that movies also can help people expand their consciousness? And above all the movies that you have analyzed with Tom, is there one in specific that you would tell that is strikingly it becomes a great catalyst in regard to broadening our awareness of our immortality?
You know, I think I would vote for It's a Wonderful Life. Not just because it's Christmas, but because it's in such a charming, such a lovely way, presents the complete beneficence of the Spirit clearance and how he really saves George Bailey from his sort of spiritual death and despair, and helps him to be reborn again in light and gratitude. I mean, it I think also shows the sort of way that different worlds, different realities kind of interpenetrate with each other. Like right at the end where the bell on the Christmas tree rings, and George looks up and he said, and his little girl says, "Oh, another angel just got his wings." I mean, if you can look at that without crying Christmas after Christmas, you are a hard-hearted person indeed.
That's for sure. It's a wonderful movie.
But it shows that our ultimate destiny is completeness and goodness.
So as you're talking about this, it reminds me of the research that was done this year and actually released this year by a neuroscientist, showing that if we read certain books, we can actually trim our personalities according to what we're reading. It depends on the frequency of it as well. Would you say that potentially movies have that power as well of teaching us.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, you might say that movies, the motion picture itself has always, since the very beginnings, both shaped and reflected who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And really worldwide. I mean, it's Hollywood is a kind of a universal language in a way.
You and Tom, when you decided on the movies you're going to analyze, of course you were very refined in selecting movies that are quite positive and inspirational. But we know that there are movies there, and there are quite a lot. Movies that talk about death and the afterlife, but they are quite aggressive and violent, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Like the movie I think that we talk about in the book that most reflects that side is the chapter on Interview with the Vampire, the Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt movie from I think the maybe early 90s. Very dark indeed. Jacob's Ladder has some dark aspects to it, but it's ultimately a movie about redemption and completion and dying into the light. So that movie has both the light and the dark side to it.
And then there's a movie from 1946 called Dead of Night, which is all about denial, the denial of death. So that's another example.
And when you talk about these movies, as we go to the list of movies that you have described, when you analyze movies that have a very intense content regarding the interaction between the afterlife and life here in the material plane, such as The Sixth Sense, The Others. So these movies, they are very strong in the content. And as you say, for example, talking about The Others, you mentioned like we must all learn to live together, the living and the dead. But we haven't learned it yet, right?
No, we haven't learned it yet.
And what do you think as a psychotherapist, what is that probably going to take? What is going to take for us to actually, as a whole, mainstream-wise, to really embrace with naturality this interaction between the two dimensions?
I think I would say that the natural vehicle that connects the two dimensions is the body. And by working with the body and by working with the breath, I think that's the most direct way to bridge the two worlds.
Mm-hmm. Do you have? We have a listener here asking. Do you have a section in your book that talks about these movies? The end for kids. You don't, right? For here we had the movies
that are especially for kids.
They talk about the hereafter.
We don't talk about any movies that are especially for kids, but we certainly talk about a wonderful movie, The Wizard of Oz, which is wonderful, of course, for kids as well as everybody else. That's our all-time favorite movie.
Yeah, there is a movie that was released recently for kids named Paranorman. You've heard about that one?
I have, but I haven't seen it.
It probably goes to that direction. But this was a question from one of the listeners. When we talk about the movie, for example, Sixth Sense, that movie really brings to us a quite interesting take on this interaction between the two worlds. And how naturally it becomes, and how sometimes this interaction happens without our awareness. So could you tell that people often have those interactions and they are not fully aware?
Tell me more what you mean.
Do you think that people, just like in the movie, they are interacting, sometimes even those in the afterlife, the discarnates, they are interacting with the incarnates. They are not aware. As much as sometimes incarnates are being influenced by discarnates and they are not fully aware. Correct?
Yes, I think that is self-evidently true, yes.
So it doesn't necessarily depend on our consciousness for such natural phenomena to happen.
No, it doesn't depend on our conscious awareness of it. No.
What other elements have you identified throughout the analysis of these movies that will build up a scenario of the afterlife? For example, in Defending Your Life, we have this movie talking about a court in the afterlife that is going to evaluate how you led your life here, your incarnation.
Yes.
What other
so
elements have you both identified?
Decide where to send you next.
Exactly. So what other elements have you identified in these movies that portray better the afterlife? Like there are actual cities. What else?
That are the actual portrayals of the afterlife. Well, there's ones that have actual portrayals of heaven, like Heaven Can Wait, or Here Comes Mr. Jordan, that show actual heavenly realms. I think it's called A Matter of Life and Death, the one with David Niven. That's another one that shows a kind of a heavenly court. But I think that those kinds of things, like courts or whatever, are sort of representations of our deep human desire to have fairness and justice, and to want to posit a realm in which fairness and justice can be truly and rightly seen. So I think that's a lot of what those kinds of courts themes in some of those classic movies.
And isn't that probably, Lynn, why so many people fear death? That they know that they are going to be evaluated, and we would say in Spiritism, they are evaluated by themselves in the afterlife.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the fear of death comes also as a byproduct of that deep understanding or that intuition that we'll have to evaluate what happened in this life.
I think that is a part of the fear of death, but it's also part of the hope that a lot of these movies portray is that justice can be done, if not now, then in the afterlife. That relationships can be healed. That log jams can be broken up and the flow of life be restored.
So why the movie What Dreams May Come wasn't in your preferred list of movies about the afterlife?
I just don't like that movie. I like the visuals of it very much. But, for me it has some things about the refusal to let go, that I just don't like that movie. People ask us all the time why that movie isn't in our book, and the truth is I just don't like it. I know many people do, and the visuals really, really are unbelievably exquisite.
And you're saying don't like it because you wrote a book that you want to be a reference for people in regards to if they want to know more about the afterlife, to encourage them to think about the continuation, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
you think that's what it portrays in the movie is not something that would be inspirational for those who watch it? Am I correct?
Well, the movie tries to be inspirational, but it has some qualities that I just don't personally like.
Mhm.
But that's what can you say? Who was it? Said taste is not disputable.
My take on that particular movie is that the spirituality was overwhelmed by the what do I want to say? Sentimentality.
Okay, it's a very emotionally intense, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
A tearjerker.
Yes, it is. It's very intense. What about movies such as Poltergeist? Because it's also now we are talking about movies that talk about these mediumistic abilities that can become quite intense, like Poltergeist.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about that aspect of the interaction with the hereafter?
You're talking about a particular movie?
Poltergeist.
Yes.
Poltergeist?
Poltergeist, yes.
Well, again, we get this theme that the realms of life and the realms of afterlife keep intersecting with each other, interpenetrating with each other, that there aren't these kinds of impenetrable barriers or boundaries between life and afterlife, that those realms are quite permeable in a way, and whether it be this kind of ghost realm that comes out of the television and snatches up the little girl, as a manifestation of the karmic consequences of desacralizing a sacred burial ground. Again, it keeps saying that the realms of the living and the dead are not completely separate at all. Mm-hmm. That there's always this resonance between the realms, and when situations are incomplete or negatively charged, they call out for completion, even in extreme ways.
So there is also this aspect about mediumship, and there are several movies in the list that you have analyzed that portray mediumship. From Sixth Sense, for example, in which the little boy has these mediumistic abilities, but the difficulty from the perspective of the mother on embracing and understanding it, to movies such as Poltergeist, in which the interaction happens so easily through people who are
through
certainly
the mediumistic dwarf Tangina.
Exactly.
In Poltergeist, yes. Or the Whoopi Goldberg character in Ghost.
Yes.
Again we see mediumship.
Mediumship again and again.
And the relationship between incarnated and deincarnated beings.
But what is interesting here is if on one side the understanding that life goes on in this more quintessenced world is something that is quite second nature. On the other hand, on these movies that you have analyzed, it seems to me that there are two elements that become that they are portrayed always in a content of conflict, psychologically speaking. One is reincarnation, for example, the movie Birth, and the conflict that is created and is within the mind of the people who are living that experience. And as well as mediumship. For example, you talked about the movie Ghost and how the mediumistic abilities of the character itself is pushed away, is resisted. So why do you think these elements become so conflicting in our society?
Why do I think things like mediumship
and reincarnation
and reincarnation? You know, I'm not entirely sure how that all happened, but I mean, mediumship is, you know, is not easy to have accurate discernment about what is, you know, true mediumship and what is some sort of con or delusional thing or whatever. I think it's not easy to have discernment in the realm of mediumship. And for sure there are fake mediums, so all mediums get tarred with that brush. But it's also true that I think that in Western culture we really very much want to keep the spiritual realm separate from the material realm. And so when anyone comes along and makes a connection between the two realms, people get very upset and often want to discredit or marginalize that person in order to support a purely capitalist and materialist point of view about life.
And that's exactly what Kardec says in the Spirit's book, that the greatest enemy of these ideas is materialism. Materialism that actually keeps us, you know,
keeps us bound
blinded
to material reality and looking for ultimate satisfaction in this realm of the transitory, which is just the wrong place to look for it.
Exactly. Would you say that also the resistance that we see to reincarnation in some of these movies portrays how the human mind postpones the implications, or not postpones, but pushes away the implications of the evidence that reincarnation happens? I would say, for example, if I know I'm going to reincarnate and reincarnation serves a purpose of growth, I have to change the way I lead my life for sure. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Would you say that the immaturity of the soul would be one of the elements that probably resists to embracing the reality about reincarnation?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right that it is about the immature soul, and that's why I think Hollywood movies are such a wonderful vehicle, because they're able to really speak the truth to immature souls and have those immature souls intuitively recognize its truth, even if they don't have the specific ideas about things like eternal life or reincarnation. I think that they're so wonderful because they're just a great language to speak to all kinds of souls, immature souls who can understand them at one level, and more mature souls who can understand them at a higher level. But you know, the heart of everyone is touched the same way by these films.
We have in chapter 15, we go into we have a footnote which really explores the whole question of reincarnation based on the book How to Know God, the Yoga Aphorisms of Patanjali. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that. And it talks about why the doctrine of reincarnation is often unpalatable to many people. And we do get into it, and we do talk about it quite a bit. We actually take it from two sides. So that all happens regarding in chapter 15, which chapter 15 is the chapter called The Bardo of Existence, Birth, which is one of my favorite chapters.
Oh, that's good to know.
But it does deal with the whole. Birth is very much about the whole question of reincarnation.
So this is probably a book that we're in this holiday season. Many people want to buy gifts for, family members. It's a great gift.
It's a great gift because it actually is a self-help book. And I've had people call me, people I don't know, send me emails saying how much the book helped them, just to help them with their lives and help them dealing with problems they were going through, especially about relatives dying and things like that. So it's a self-help book in a way.
And that's very interesting. So as Dr. Eben Alexander revealed about your book, Dr. Eben Alexander was here at Kardec Radio on July 4th, and he talked about his very experience. He's the author of the best-selling book, Proof of Heaven. And it's interesting. I'm going to read what he told about your book. Death at the Movies appeals to the universal wish to know and understand what lies beyond our present existence. With keen insight, Lynn and Tom Davis Gianelli use popular films as vehicles to explore perennial spiritual concepts about death and what follows, showing us profound examples of people coming to terms with their ultimate vulnerability as manifested by their unique experiences and letting go. Their analyses are wise, thoughtful, and relatable, and also very helpful. So, Lynn and Tom, we're delighted to have you here at Kardec Radio. We'd like to ask you to relay your final comments for the listener at Kardec Radio, please.
Well, we wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Wonderful.
And really, I guess to say that suffering is not an absolute that one has to accept in their life, and and we hope that that in some small way this book does help people who do have dealing with the anxieties of death and dying.
Okay, Len.
I think in the spirit of one of the other great transit movies, we would say A Christmas Carol. I would end with Tiny Tim's benediction. God bless us, everyone.
All right. We thank you very much, first for writing the book, and second for being here at Kardec Radio and for existing as well. Thank you so much. We hope to be in touch and have you back in the near future. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you, and we would love to be able to get I'm not sure what they call it, a copy of the interview.
We certainly will send it to you.
Great, thanks a lot. Really nice talking to you.
Thank you so much, Tom and Lynn. So, dear listener, we hope you have enjoyed it. It's very intriguing. This book is certainly a good gift for the holidays, and he talks about it's this opportunity to learn from the movies. As we talked, as we read and watch these contents, we can certainly shape up what we feel, how we think. So many to us and ask, Vanessa, what kind of book can I give to people? I have a friend or a family member who would like to know more, but they are just beginning or they're not quite sure. Well, there are many books in Spiritism, but we would say this one, Death at the Movies, is a good one because it's fascinating. It's also fun because you're going to read this book and have the opportunity also to watch the movie. And it's a good list of movies also to watch to delight our minds. And in this holiday season, they talk about movies that are good for family. If you read a book, it's a good opportunity to sit down with your family, watch a certain movie, read what they talk about, and discuss. A great opportunity to expand awareness right there in your home, because the temple of God is wherever we are. It's not only out there elsewhere. You can bring it right to the coziness of your home. And this book will certainly promote that opportunity for family discussion. And we need to restore family togetherness. So this is a good book, Death at the Movies. Just go to the website, deathatthemovies.com. You get to know more about the book, the authors, the movies that they describe about. And if you click there, you're going to get a list of the places where you can buy it from. But, of course, at Amazon.com, you can find the book for you. They ship very fast, so it's an opportunity for you to get the book and understand more about spirituality. So, as we said here, we're talking about these reflections pre-Christmas and also for the new year. We're going to give a very short break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the program with a beautiful message that was received by the renowned medium Chico Xavier about the very preparation for Christmas.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Books of Andre Luiz. Through the hands of the most prolific medium of all times, Chico Xavier, the spirit doctor Andre Luiz wrote a series of books that unveil the mechanisms of life and life after life. From the best-selling novel No Solar, Our Home, to And Life Goes On, the reader will find illumination for a fulfilled life on Earth as well as immortal happiness. Check the many titles available at the international distributor, EDI CEI of America. Their website is www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio. Traveling to another country? Immigrating elsewhere? Prepare yourself by reading the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, in which several loving and wise spirits wrote through the hands of Chico Xavier and Waldo Vieira, telling all of us the tips and hints of a successful transition to a new land. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Do you want Spiritist books for your children? At Edicei of America, you'll find a collection of them, from the best-selling book Our Father, in which the Spirit Mei Mei, through Chico Xavier, brought countless poems, stories, and folk tales based on the Lord's Prayer, to the beautiful and educational collection by the author Edailson Salles on Back to School and many others. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
And now we return to our program.
We are here talking about Death at the Movies and an opportunity to revisit these movies that Hollywood has been promoting and that actually talk about life in the beyond, reincarnation, mediumship. You can go to the website of deathatthemovies.com, get to know the list of the movies that Lynn and Tom Janelli discuss, and as such, you can get a hold of these movies and discuss about them in your own homes. So right now, as we're preparing for Christmas, dear listener, let us prepare for Christmas right here and now as we read to you a message that was psychographed by Chico Xavier. The author of the message is Emmanuel, and the book is Nosso Livro. It's a book that is not yet in English, but this message was translated by Cynthia Fabretti and kindly forwarded to us by Carla Smith. This message is entitled, Jesus is Calling. Jesus is Calling is the very message we're going to read right now. Since the first hour of his divine apostleship, Jesus has been calling for workers who will participate in the kingdom of God on earth. At first, he called Peter and Andrew, the humble fishermen, to the task of salvation. He invited Matthew, the tax administrator, for the collection of goods from heaven. He brought Mary Magdalene, who was obsessed by several spirits, for the necessary renewal. He invited Joanna, the wife of the renowned officer of public welfare, towards the fraternal work of goodness. He called Zacchaeus, the fortuitous steward, from the top of the sycamore tree for the charitable services. He alerted Mary of Bethany towards the value of meditation. He advised Martha, who was busy cleaning the house, to the works of sublime thought. He awakened Nicodemus, the intellectual master of Israel, for the ministry of sanctification. He raised Lazarus from the tomb to show the manifestation of divine power. And yet, in his last days and final hours, he awoke a crucified thief to the divine hope. In the 20 centuries of Christianity that we have been living, the Lord has been calling servants for the sublime redemption and improvement. There is work for everyone and divine reward for all. What are you doing, dear friend? Jesus gave his life for us on the cross. What are we doing for him? Emmanuel. We then now thank our dear Jesus for being with us since day one on planet Earth, for his kindness, his compassion, his friendship. Dear Master, thank you for never giving up on us, for being the divine representative in our lives. For protecting our lives when we forget to protect our own selves. For giving us guidance when often we don't even are aware of our need to be guided. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to live in this world in the name of God, the blessed school of the earth. May we become a little bit more peacemakers. May we be more tolerant, more fraternal, kinder, more patient, and grow strongly in our virtues to reach out to others who are in greater need. And at this very moment, may we ask you that the shower of blessings that now fall upon us may be shared with everyone whom at this very moment is suffering and has no idea about your existence or forgot about the existence of our Creator. May this season be of reflection, of meditation, and most importantly, of exercise in love and in light. And so be it. Dear friends at Kardec Radio, we hope you have enjoyed this opportunity, and we thank everyone who has been helping us throughout these programs. Next week when we come back, we are going to wrap up the year dedicating the program to the healing power of the Christ. We are going to read messages for you about Jesus, about Christ, about the purpose of our lives, so we can begin a new year with lots of encouragement and light in our hearts. Thank you also, Marcos D. Clay, for your loving wishes to all of us, and we hope to keep on receiving your contribution at Kardec Radio by sending your suggestions, you, Marcos, and every friend who listens to Kardec Radio. We wish you lots of blessings, and be with us, because on Wednesday we're going to be here, God at Home, with Francisca Kranz and Mackenzie Mello. On Thursdays, Daniel Santos is relaying beautiful talks from Spiritist Network. And on Sunday, of course, Spiritist Awareness, now being edited by our dear friend Carla Silva. Thank you so much, dear listener. We are going to be back here live on a very special program, The Healing Power of Christ, next Saturday.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.